Hi again, here's another quick and dirty soldering tutorial, again with MH Eurorack equipment. Last time I continually referred to them by the wrong name, but it's MH Eurorack. So this is the CMIX, and this is a module that enables us to mix signals as well as use it as an attenuverter and an offset. So it's kind of a mixer utility module. So we get 3 inputs and 1 output with 3 potentiometers to control our signal. It's an active circuit, so there's quite a lot more components in than the previous 2. So we have all this stuff to contend with. Let me just separate all this out. So resistors, all with the ratings written on the end, which is always helpful. So yes, active components. So we've got a power socket. In the packet was a lead, I think. This came with it. There was all the different kits were all together. So I think this is for this one, I'm assuming. And then 2 boards. So one for the components and one for the faceplate. There's the face that way, and then we've got the actual PCB proper. So since last time I bought this jig thing, we can put a board in and tow it round. I've not actually tried it yet, so I don't know if it'll be any good. I may resort to just using my roll of masking tape like I did last time. So yeah, I've got the instructions loaded up. So place and solder resistors 1 to 4. So there's a BOM bill of materials which tells us that resistors 1 and 2 are the 10R. It's got to be those, yep. 1 and 2 are these 2 there. Right, let's get those in. So yeah, it says start on the front of the PCB side without the MH logo. So this is the side that we need to be on. That's what the little rectangular bits mean. That's representing where the components sit. Get all these sort of sat in place first. Try and make sure I'm actually filming what I'm doing. It's kind of the whole point, Chris, is to film the thing. Yes, this is 10, that's 4. 10 is 68K. Just try and pull these through flush. So that's a bit more like it. We need to do 3, 4, 6 and 7. Which are all 100K. That's 3, that's, we've already established that's 4, and 6 and 7 are there, right. So I'm actually on holiday this week, which is the first time I've had a proper break since my ill-fated Christmas break, during which I was ill. So I came out at the other end of my Christmas holiday feeling more exhausted than when I started my Christmas holiday. So I've been running on empty for quite a while. And I'm self-employed, so when there's work, you work. And there's been a lot of work, like ridiculously large amount of work. Music work and my joinery work, so I've just not stopped. And yeah, so I hit the first day of my holiday and my body just decided you need to sleep, so I literally just kind of collapsed and hardly anything got done for about the first 3 days. And I created a list of things I wanted to get done. This is on that list. Apart from making a bit of music, I haven't really done very much, but that's kind of the point of a holiday, is that you rest. Yeah, so just place and solder, so we'll solder these. Let's try this thing out then. So that just turns, and we can get a good look at this board. So this is fine solder, 0.5mm, the other one was 1. I was struggling a bit with that, it's a bit too big. So what I'm going to do is chop a few legs off that I've soldered already, and that just makes a bit of space. You maybe be able to hear machinery running in the background. By the way, my father lives with us and he's doing some stuff in the workshop. If this were a sound design tutorial, I would make sure that there wasn't loads of noise going on in the background, but it doesn't really matter too much. Right. Place and solder capacitors 1 and 2, which are the 1 and 2 are ceramic. That's what these are. So let's just take this out as a spring. How does that lock? Ah, I see. Right. All right. C1 and 2 would be these two components here. That way round. These 4 pins here. Sorry, these 8 pins here. 2 rows of 4. That's for the chip socket, which sits on the other side. So it's these 2 pairs of holes here. So C2, C1, they go that way, left and right. So like that. So yeah, I'm going to do one at once because they're already tight together. It's always best to let your solder cool for a bit before you chop the legs, just to make sure it's completely solidified. So diodes now, these have an orientation and there's a nice helpful diagram in the instructions to show us which way around we want to be placing them. Just to better see, there's a silver line on one end, so that points towards the square pad. And they need to be mounted vertically. And you can see, this is where we put in them, D1, D2. Not that there's a difference, but you know, square pad is where the line faces towards, so it doesn't matter whether you put the body of the diode quite which way it goes. I'm going to copy what is shown in the instructions just for fun. So we need to bend the leg. So the leg gets bent over. That's better, you can see that line now. So that's the little silver line, and that faces towards the square pad. And we need to do that for both of them. There we go, so that's one, and then the other one's going to be folded the same but placed the other way. So that's what we've got. They're facing in opposite directions. There we go, so let's chop them off. So, diodes are in. Place and solder 2 electrolytic capacitors C5 and C6, which is also in the diagram. It says, take care of the orientation. The long leg of the capacitor must go in the hole marked plus. So the long leg goes in the pad marked plus. You can also see on this side there's a little negative symbol for the negative leg when that's the short leg. Negative is that side, plus is that side. So long leg in the dark bit, short leg in the bright bit. Yeah, because it says just there, that's the plus. So that's the caps, what we're doing next. R5 is mounted vertically. So it's taken me ages to spot this, but there's a R5 just there. So that will go between these two. And it mounts vertically. R5 is 100k. There's a little circle there. It shows us that that's where the component sits and it stands up and goes back in the hole. So it's 100k. It's one of these. So it stands like that. Place and solder R8, R9 and R11. So 9 is 1K. That's 9. There. So R8 and R11 are both 100k resistors again. So where did I put those? There were 2 left. So yeah, 100k R8 and R11. So that's that. Let's get them soldered in. Capacitors C3 and C4 are the same as these. One's marked 104. This side, I think, yeah. So C3 and C4 are here. And you can see the little lines again representing that's the side that the component sits on. So they want to go through that way. And again, I think I'm going to do this one at a time because it's a bit awkward. So one of the things I was planning again on doing during this holiday was a deep dive into the Yamaha MU15 XG sound module, which I was kindly given by Clark Jackson Motorbike. I've already made a jam with it, which I enjoyed, but it just feels a bit too much like work to be making that tutorial during my holiday, so I think I'm going to just kick that down the road a little bit. I'm still looking forward to talking about it because it's very cool. Place and solder the IC socket. The notch on the IC socket should line up with the notch on the PCB. There is our IC socket. So we have a notch, and that goes there to match the notch on the board. Yeah, I might need to tape this. Let's just go back. Sometimes you can just bend legs over to keep things in place, but these are quite short, so I'm not going to do that. I'll get one line and then just check it's flush. Okay, and pop, so it wasn't quite against the board. Ten-pin power connector on the side of the board of the MH logo. If you're using shrouded header, make sure the notch lines up with the notch marking on the PCB. I think I'm just going to do that anyway. So that the notch on the board matches the notch there, so that way. I'm just going to do a couple and check. So we've got to snap the lugs off all these potentiometers. So not the bits that we solder. So we need to solder these pins, and these 3 pins are the ones that do the work. These ones just hold it in place. But these here are designed to go through a board with a hole in. So we need to snap these off. The easiest way to do that is just to use some pliers and some metal fatigue just to snap them off like that. So there's 3 pots and I've got to take 2 lugs off each, so I'm going to stop the video for a bit. So that's done. We need to place them but not solder them. So we shove these in, we don't solder them yet, we basically need to line everything up on the faceplate, do the nuts up and then solder them. There we go, so it clips in like that. Oh, I better check they're all the same. So these are all the same, so we don't need to worry. I thought they would be because they all do the same thing, but yeah, you never know. Always worth checking. Right. Just before I continue, zoom in. This pad here is shared between this socket and this socket, so two of the connectors go through here. Like that, and then the other one also goes through that hole. So we need to do that on both sides. So I'm just going to put everything on loosely. Get those through there. That keeps it all in place. So now we've got to there. The washers for the potentiometers go on before the nuts. Like that. Yeah, I'm going to pause it while I do that. So those are on. The friction from the pins of the potentiometers is keeping it all from falling to pieces, but there's a chance it might just kind of pop out. So the first thing I'm going to do is solder the end with the sockets in. So I'm just going to get some solder on this end and then just give it a press to make sure it's in far enough. So we have that notch, as you can see quite clearly there, and on the IC we have a little blob there, and that's what we line up with it. Sometimes there is a little notch like on the end, the same shape as that notch on the socket, but in this case we've got a little blob, so it's that. But you may need to just squeeze the legs in a little. I don't know why that's a thing, but they don't necessarily go straight in. There we go. So we're in. Just push it home. So that little blob is lining up with the hole in the end of the socket that we saw earlier. So these are knurled knobs. They don't have a keyway, but they do have little bits that line up, so the best thing to do is just to turn them all the way down, get the pointer to line up the way you think it should be, test it that way, that's right, and then just push it home. So we'll do that for all these. So that should be as done. So as you can see, I've got the CMIX mounted here. I've already tested it to make sure it's working. I've got these little Eurorack indicators that I bought. They've got an LED in them. If we connect one of these to the output, we can see if we turn up the output of knob number 3, we get a positive voltage coming out up to 5 volts as we turn it up, and we've got a negative voltage coming out as we turn it down. So we've got an offset there that we can add to these two, or we could just use this as a voltage on its own. So the CMIX is mostly designed to work with CV signals, but I can also connect it to audio, so this is going to our audio output. If I connect one of the drone outputs from here into one of the inputs, as we turn it up, we'll be able to hear it. And then we can connect another signal to one of the other inputs. And mix our audio together. So the center is going to be off, and below that we'll get an inverted version of our audio. In this example we're listening to the drone directly, and we can use the CMIX to mix in some extra signals. something I can do is just take the output, plug that directly into pitch here on the oscillator that we're listening to, and just turn up number 3. As you can hear, that has an offset to the existing pitch. But if we were to plug an LFO into number 1, turn it up a bit, that's this LFO. We can mix in a bit of another LFO on 2. It's now a combination of both of these LFOs, and then we can offset it with the third knob. Or if we wanted to, we could use the third input to mix in a third signal. So in this example, I'm taking the output from the CMIX to trigger the gate on the Behringer's envelope. The output has been duplicated through this mult just so that we can see on this indicator what it's doing, and that's being sent to the pitch on this drone. So with these knobs turned up, I can plug in one of the LFOs, which will do this. When this voltage is high enough, that's going to trigger this envelope and we can see it. And if we do it from this output, we get a different result, but we can mix these two together to make interesting patterns. So we can take this, add it into the socket. That's going to give us a different result, and then by changing the offset we can create different patterns too. Like that. So I hope you enjoyed this quick tutorial, and it just shows you what the CMIX can do and how easy it is to build. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you again. Cheers.